Welcome to Running Up the Score. I am Alex Kennedy. This is my show that airs every Tuesday and Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, where we talk all things sports with a variety of guests. Today, my guest is Kurt Helin from NBC Sports' Pro Basketball Talk. You can follow him on Twitter at Basketball Talk. Let's get to my interview with Kurt. Kurt, thanks for joining me. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks for having me. This is going to be fun. It's good to hear your voice and see you, man. It's media friends on the other coast. I don't get to see them enough, man.
Yeah, like aside from Summer League, I feel like we don't really get a chance to catch up and hang out very often. So it's definitely fun to have you on. Always fun to, chat basketball with you. I want to start with this Phoenix Suns team because obviously we haven't seen them at full strength because of the Bradley Beal injury. Devin Booker was out for a bit. Are you concerned at all about this Beal injury? Because we've seen a lot of players have back issues and it ends up being a nagging thing, even if they feel better. Later in the season, it might pop back up. Are you concerned about Beal and the Suns team, or are you still feeling good about their chances in the Western Conference?
No, I'm concerned. I'm legitimately concerned about, Beal's back is a good point, but it's like, this has been a team of guys who have had nagging histories, and you don't want it to be true, but Durant certainly had it. Booker's got his own injury history, but Beal is the one I was concerned about. And tied to that, Alex, their depth has not looked that great. Once you get past those three in whatever combo, there's been spots here and there, but it has not been, Nurkic has had moments, but he certainly hasn't been great. Okogie's been, you can keep saying we haven't seen the whole thing together, but that's part of the reason for having depth. It's what the Lakers thought they were doing this offseason. We're going to get more depth. It'll be okay when our guys miss some time or are off. And it just hasn't been in Phoenix, which makes me concerned for, look, this is a team that some idiots picked to go to the, to come out of the West this year. You think about the depth you need to do that and your ability to be versatile, and they're not showing any of that level of play yet.
Yeah, it's definitely concerning. On this show, before the season started, Sam Amick and I talked about just some of the concerns about this team and the lack of depth, and whether, going from DeAndre Ayton to Yusuf Nurkic was an upgrade even. We both kind of thought it was a downgrade, especially because Nurkic is someone who has missed a lot of time with injuries. So, it kind of adds to that problem of another star or another starting level player that, has an injury history. So it's definitely concerning. I'm hoping they can put it together because I think they do have potential. It could be a really fun team when they're at full strength, but I don't know. There's definitely a lot of concerns there. I want to ask you about this Zach LaVine situation with the Chicago Bulls, because now there are reports that LaVine could be available and that the Bulls are maybe open to moving him. There have been reports prior to that he seemed to be available and that, a lot of teams were kind of expecting him to maybe be moved by the deadline. But now, you have reports that the Bulls are finally open to those conversations. And it seems like this could be a this year kind of thing where maybe LaVine, maybe DeMar DeRozan, the Bulls could kind of blow it up. What are your thoughts on kind of LaVine's value league-wide?
First off, isn't it, Alex, like the most Chicago Bulls thing ever to go, you know what? We're going to wait till the year after the Wembanyama, Scoot Henderson, Thompson twins draft. You know what? Now that it's going to be kind of a down year at the top of the draft, let's blow it up. This seems like a good time. I could say, you got the same thing, I'm sure. Like talking to people around the league. Everybody expected this last summer or maybe last trade deadline or maybe the summer before that. It was kind of obvious this wasn't working, and especially with Lonzo's unfortunate situation. And, obviously he's out still this year. And as much as I'd like to think we'll see him again, I'm not sold. This just wasn't going to work. So that said, to your actual question, I don't know that it's that high. I don't think that they're going to have to take less than other superstars have gotten recently, because he's still owed $138 million and 3 years after this season. Except, you're picking up whatever of the prorated $40 million he makes this year. You've got a lot of money on the hook for the next 3 seasons. And he's an elite scorer. He's an all-star level player. He will go get you a lot of buckets. But Alex, what else does he bring?
That's one of the things that Jake Fisher talked about when he was on the show too. He was like, there is a concern amongst executives that, he has the accolades and the slam dunk contest and all that, but does it really translate to winning? And at the end of the day, that's what it's about. When you take on a huge contract like that, you want someone that's going to be able to contribute to winning. And he hasn't really shown that to this point in his career. So, Yeah, I'm definitely curious. I think a change of scenery could be good for him, especially if he's, maybe like a second or third option on a team. But yeah, I think there are some real concerns there from executives, and I understand kind of where they're coming from, just because he hasn't shown he's able to kind of win at a high level. What are some teams that make sense as like a landing spot for you? Because I know we've heard the Lakers, the Heat. There have been a few teams that have been kind of thrown out there. The Sixers, because they're trying to find that third star after moving Harden. What teams make sense for as a landing spot in your opinion?
I've heard the Sixers, by the way, they want to see what they've got. They're not doing anything. They want to watch this team through essentially Christmas because they've been one of the best. I'll count them as a surprise, really, frankly. Like they've been better than I expected this season. And so, hey, let's see what this thing really is. I still think I agree that but you think they need one more shot creator? They're really going to contend. Like they need one more guy. But I don't know if that's LaVine for them. That might not necessarily be the fit. By the way, that's the other part of this. If you're Chicago, you got to do this all in, right? It's got to be, hey, DeMar DeRozan, Alex Caruso, Vucevic, probably next summer or something. There's not a huge market because of that contract for LaVine. I'll tell you the team I'm wondering if the fit is there is Memphis, which I watched in person, and it is, obviously John Morant is out, and I don't think we can overestimate how much Steven Adams means to that team in terms of setting screens and doing the dirty work, and now he's out for the season. But you watch them try to create shots right now, as much as Desmond Bane is trying and doing what it can. It is a struggle for them to create looks right now. They need another shot creator if long term if they're going to build to where they think they belong. Is Zach the better fit there? Does that help their defense? I'm not sure about the fit, but they've got some assets, and that makes sense to me in some ways more than Philadelphia, more than Lakers. Like, I don't know. I'll ask you: do you think really giving up? Let's say it's got to be D'Angelo. They can't do it till December, and they throw D'Angelo Russell in the package. Is it that big an upgrade? Is it worth taking on all that extra cash for Zach LaVine if you're the Lakers?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I feel like the Lakers always get thrown into these conversations because they're always star hunting, and I think a lot of agents insert the Lakers into conversations too, especially like in free agency, because it gets their guy talked about, and they're constantly being talked about whenever these kind of things pop up. But I don't know if it's the right move. Especially we saw, after that midseason shakeup last year, this team looked really, really good. They were able to go on their runs to the Western Conference. I don't know if blowing it up and taking, a big chance. I mean, we kind of saw them do that with like the Russell Westbrook move, blowing up, sacrificing depth, taking on a big contract, and we all know how that worked out. So not to say that Zach LaVine is at this stage of his career where Russell Westbrook was. I mean, LaVine is obviously, going to put up better numbers, and he's in his prime, whereas Russell Westbrook wasn't at that point. But I just think after what they showed last year, I wouldn't really be in a rush to blow that up for a Zach LaVine necessarily. So it's interesting that they're being mentioned, and I wonder, how real that is or what the conversations are, between the Bulls and the Lakers. But yeah, it's a good question. Even the Heat, I know the Heat are another one of those teams that, because Pat Riley's kind of known to make those big swings, and they've been linked to everyone from Damian Lillard to Bradley Beal, so it makes sense that the Heat are being mentioned, but even LaVine's fit with the Heat, I'm not sure if I like that a ton. What are your thoughts on Miami?
Yeah, I was going to say that they fit in the Laker category for me. You're going to have to probably give up Tyler Hero to make the money work on that deal. You get a guy in LaVine who's 5 years older and makes more money. Is the upgrade that big? I mean, I think LaVine's a better player than Tyler Hero, a better scorer, a more consistent scorer and shot creator. But is the upgrade worth everything you're giving up? I'm not convinced that it is. Let's put it this way. I'm also just not convinced, hey, we add Zach LaVine to Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler, and we're knocking on Boston's door. I'm not sure what that move is, by the way, for Miami, but like they seem as much as they've won a bunch of 6 in a row, 7 in a row, whatever it is now.
Yeah.
They still seem a step behind the elite of the East to me.
Yeah, I think this Heat team is very interesting. I don't know. I think it really comes down to how teams are valuing LaVine, kind of like we talked about. There might be some team out there that loves him and thinks, hey, he is the missing piece and he can put us over the edge and make us a contender. But I'm not sure which team that is. But yeah, I mean, it only takes one. It only takes one team. You mentioned this rookie class: Victor Wembanyama, Scoot Henderson, the Thompson twins. It's been a ton of fun. And then Chet Holmgren is kind of the cheat code. He gets to be factored into this rookie class as well. What are your thoughts on what we've seen from Wemby so far? It seems like not only is he, fun for like diehard basketball fans, but like my mother-in-law is texting me about Wemby. Like he's getting casual fans really interested in basketball. And I think you don't see that very often. I mean, the hype has kind of transcended NBA fans, and now casual sports fans are super interested too, which I think is really cool. What are your thoughts on what Wemby has shown so far, and then this rookie class as a whole?
Yeah, I'm out here in Southern California, and I've got a ton of Laker friends, fans, just because I'm in I'm in Greater Los Angeles. And even they can be so politely worded, would be focused tunnel vision. Like if it didn't happen on the Lakers, it didn't happen. And they're asking me about Wemby. Like, is this real? Is it like, so I think it's an interesting beginning for him. I mean, they're letting him explore the studio space, aren't they? Like you want to bring the ball up, you want to create your own shots. We're going to put you in the post a little. They're going to do that. He looks like Ty Lewis actually talked about this when the Clippers were out here. Like you can still kind of get to him physically. You can kind of get him out of his spots. He'll get stronger. He'll also just get smarter about it. Right now, though, you can kind of knock him off his game a little bit, and I think some teams have been able to do that. Not necessarily there's nobody who matches his size, but almost smaller defenders who are more physical, PJ Tuckers of the world, are like going to be the problem. And it's an interesting contrast they're also experimenting with everything. The Jeremy Sohan experiment at point guard. If you were trying to win games, you wouldn't be doing that. Do you like that? I mean, do you like that? Do you like the idea of letting them just kind of like this whole team is just kind of exploring what they are, right?
Yeah, it reminds me of, hey, let's play Giannis at point guard, KD's like rookie year. Let's play him at the 2. Like, teams that are kind of in that rebuilding stage, I feel like they're like, hey, this is going to make the player more versatile and skilled in the long run. And we're not really trying to compete this year. So if the player gets better and we're completely focused on developing our young players, then it's going to pay off. And then, we can get another high draft pick to kind of put another piece next to Wemby. So I think it makes sense, especially, this Spurs team has shown that they're great at drafting, great at developing young talent. So, I trust their approach. I think they've kind of earned that. So yeah, I don't think there's any chance that we see him stay at the 1 like long term. I guess it's more just about, can we put the ball in his hands and get him those reps so that he's more comfortable and has that in his skill set in his bag. I think that's kind of the move. So I don't hate it, especially if you're trying to get another top pick. I think the mistake that some teams make, especially when it's a coach that maybe doesn't have job security, which we know Pop has the ultimate job security, they're going to play veterans. They're going to use the young guys sparingly, whereas this team, they're all in on youth development. I think that's the move.
Well, how many coaches have we seen too who, hey, I'm here to develop players. You've got all this space, build this out. And then the ownership management goes, I'm tired of losing. And then it's a coaching change, but it's more of a mentality change. Like the other coach could have done this, but that's not what you told him to do. You get these, shifts to that. And like you said, with the job security is huge. Popovich is there to coach as long as he wants to. Same with Buford in the front office. Even if they leave, the system's not changing. Like, Mike Budenholzer's out there. You can roll him in and it's going to be the same. I really think that they are going to be not about winning. They're clearly not about winning this year, as opposed to like, he gets compared a lot to Chet Holmgren, but Chet Holmgren's in such a different situation where you've got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's an first team all NBA, in the MVP discussion in the broad sense kind of player. And you've got Williams and you've got all these other, Giddies out there, and you're developing guys, but you've also got all this talent. And you're like, hey, Chet, here's the lane, right? Like, go block some shots, space the floor on pick and rolls with your 3. Like, we have very specific things we need you to do. And he's doing them very well, but it's a radically different experience from what they're asking of him.
Yeah, it's totally different. This OKC team is, their goal is to make the playoffs this year. I had Jalen Williams on the show, a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about that. Like, hey, we're a young team, but we enter every game thinking we're going to win. Our goal is to make the playoffs. So yeah, I think it's very different than the Spurs, who I'm sure, if you talk to players, they're going to say similar things. But we know if you look at just how they're kind of approaching things, it seems like the goal is long-term youth development, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think I'm very curious to see what Wemby. There's so much young talent, first of all, in the NBA right now. That's so exciting. Like, there's so many guys that are in their early 20s that in a couple years could be just absolute monsters, like Wemby, Chet, Paolo. There's so many just fun guys to watch. The Thompson twins have been already super impressive and kind of hitting the ground running. Like, Scoot Henderson hasn't really shown a lot, but I still believe in his potential long term. I just think the NBA is in really good hands when you kind of look at all the young talent in the league. And I can't wait to watch these guys kind of develop and hit their prime. What are your thoughts on kind of the Thompson twins, Scoot, some of the other rookies that we've seen so far?
Yeah, I'm with you on Scoot, by the way. I'm very high on what he's going to be, but obviously there's a bit of a learning curve, and now he's injured, which kind of sets the whole thing back a little bit. But long term, I'm still incredibly high on what he's going to be. Oh, so the guy that has impressed me that more than I expected once we got to the games is Ausar Thompson. Like, Hugh has been fantastic on both ends. He's been great on defense in Detroit. It's not, he went number 5. It's not like he was some secret, but he wasn't the more touted of the two because Amen's considered the more physically gifted, more explosive player, but he's so polished. Ausar is just like making plays, making smart plays. And a rookie, it's one of those things that I love. If a rookie's impacting on the defensive end, and Chet and Wemby are doing it, but if a rookie is defending, that's a great sign because rookies don't defend. They're generally horrible on that end. Like, it takes time for even the Dylan Brookses of the world to develop into that guy, or name your good perimeter defender. He's kind of come in and done it. It's a really positive sign for Monty Williams and the where the Pistons will be headed over time.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of his game. I was able to draft him in a dynasty basketball league that with some other like sports writers. And so I've been loving it. Like the rebounds, the blocks, the steals. And I did not expect him to be this NBA ready. All the talk about, him and especially, how he kind of got to the NBA, like playing overtime elite. There were questions about, the competition level and things like that. So I was viewing him as more of like a long-term, project. Maybe in 2-3 years he's contributing. And I did not think he'd hit the ground running and be this impactful from day one, especially on the defensive end. To your point, it's so hard for rookies to kind of come in and do that. I think that's another reason why this class is so special. It's not just the offensive impact and guys that we kind of haven't seen before in terms of how they're, built and things like that. It's the fact that you have, 3 or 4 dominant defenders that are already making a huge impact. And they're already, talking about some of these guys being like on all defensive teams this year, which is crazy for multiple rookies to be in that conversation. It's really fun. I want to ask you about this Indiana Pacers team. Tyrese Halliburton has been so much fun. They're 7-4 right now, near the top of the Eastern Conference. Halliburton is just killing it out there, facilitating, having like 0 turnover games, looks incredible running that offense. I was a huge fan of the trade when they first made it. Granted, I think I was a little unfair on the Kings. It did work out for the Kings. They were make the playoffs, and it's worked out better than I thought for Sacramento, but I just didn't understand that trade at all, like giving up on someone like Tyrese in the beginning. I think I love it for Indiana. I think he's an incredible player to build around on and off the floor. He kind of like checks every box if you're an executive. So I love kind of what they built there. And then they had a great offseason too. I really like the moves that they made. What are your thoughts on this Pacers team and kind of what we're seeing from Tyrese?
By the way, I was with you on that trade, and I admit now, like, I underestimated the Kings end. I thought they were trading short-term for long-term, and I think their ceiling is only so high, but they broke the drought. They're kind of a fun team now, especially with the way Fox has blown up. So kudos to them. I think that this is one of those trades that may work out for both sides. But I had a scout come to me. That's come to me, but we were talking, middle to end of last season, and he's like, "Are you watching enough Tyrese Halliburton? Like, you know how good he is playing right now. Like, go watch more Halliburton." And he ended up finishing. I looked it up the other day because I was kind of caught off guard. Last season, an estimated plus minus, whatever you think, it's like a good go-to all-encompassing stat. He was 6th in the league in offense. Like he was making differences then. And for you and me and all the people who are watching this who are basketball junkies, so we stayed up at odd hours and watched FIBA this summer. He was so like that team was so dynamic. All those guys wanted to play with him and run and get to spaces with him. So I thought he was ready for making a leap, but it's been even more impressive than I thought. I mean, Alex, I don't know about you, but what really gets me on this team is who's their second best offensive player? Is it Miles Turner, Nembhard?
Yeah.
Like he is lifting up not bad players, but there is not another elite player. There's not another top 15 offensive player at his position on that team. Maybe Miles, but like he's lifting up guys who are good, but he's just taking them to another level. And when some of that talent grows, or they get some guys to put around him, it's going to be fun. I mean, it's already fun.
Yeah, and I think you're right that he's the kind of player that other guys want to play with, like, getting easy baskets. He's unselfish. He also is just like super personable and charismatic. So he has a lot of friends around the league. Like, I think he's the kind of guy. I did an article about a year ago about Tyrese and adapting to Indiana, and I interviewed Chad Buchanan, the GM there, and he said, we have a mural downtown of Reggie Miller, and we think Tyrese is that kind of player. Like, he will have a mural someday in Indiana. We think he can lead us to the promised land. They are like all in on Tyrese, and it's paying off. I mean, he looks incredible out there, and I think they really do believe not only is he going to be a superstar for them, but he can attract another superstar as well to Indiana, which is tough to do. I mean, that's a market where you pretty much have to draft your talent or trade for players, but they believe that maybe he could be the kind of guy that changes that, and other guys want to come play with him. But yeah, I mean, I think he and Miles have great chemistry, and that's working out really well. But you're right, Miles is more of a defensive-minded player, and once they get like another star-level player there, I think that could be scary. But the fact that they're winning without that, it's really impressive and a testament to their core they've kind of assembled there. I want to ask you about the Los Angeles Lakers, because I don't know. I feel like we talked about a little bit earlier about, them in the Zach LaVine mix and stuff like that, but they just don't scare me as much this year as maybe they did last year in the second half when they were hot and looking really good. You mentioned, you're based out there. What are your thoughts on this Lakers team and how they've kind of gotten off to this slow start?
I'm like, yeah, they looked great the last time I saw them, but they were playing Memphis, so it doesn't really count. They're just a team, and I think the Warriors are in this category for me. Like, they're capable, like their peak is very good. Like, maybe not Denver good, but their peak is very good, but everything has to go right. And that's been part of it. Like, you need big nights from Anthony Davis, and he's had some really good nights, and he's played good defense, but it's not necessarily every night where they need it. And this team, I haven't looked at the on-off numbers in the last few days with him, but this team is a mess when LeBron's off the court. And that was what they were trying to get away from, right? Like, LeBron's going to turn 39 next month. You don't want that to be the guy. You have to anchor everything around. Hey, we're going to play him 30 minutes. Oh, we can't play him 30 minutes or we don't win. Like, that's what they wanted to avoid. That's what this depth was supposed to fix. And I think it's gotten better. Austin Reeves got off to a slow start, but he's found his groove again. I think that they're figuring out what does and doesn't work, but they are really, I mean, doesn't it feel like they're only a threat if everything clicks? And I was about to say, that's not how the NBA works, man. That's just not how life works. Like, just nothing ever goes perfectly. And I'm not sure, it's the Warriors are the same. Hey, we're 6-2. Look how good we are. Oh, no, we've lost 5 in a row. And they've got a whole different set of problems.
It is very concerning how much they're relying on LeBron, especially at this stage in his career. And when, to your point, they started the season by saying we're going to play him fewer minutes and all that. I mean, by the end of the year, he is LeBron, so he's a cyborg, obviously. But that's going to take a toll throughout the course of a season. Like, if they want to finish as high in the standings as they're hoping to finish, then LeBron's going to have to play big minutes and have a huge workload. And then by the end of the year, who knows what that does to him and how that affects him in the playoffs and all that. So definitely concerning. One team that's really surprised me is the Houston Rockets. I covered their opening game against the Orlando Magic, and it was awful. I mean, both ends of the floor, just it was rough. Orlando blew them out. And I came on this show and I was like, man, they are in trouble. And it was obviously a huge overreaction to one game. Now they're 6-3. They're fourth in the Western Conference right now, which is pretty wild. And obviously they had a lot of changes over the offseason, from the coaching staff to some focal points. And that's going to take time to develop. And I should have known better than coming on here 1 or 2 games in and bashing them. But it definitely takes time to adjust to all those changes. But this Houston team looks much better than I expected lately. What are your thoughts on the Rockets and what they've shown?
First off, Alex, one of the great traditions of sports fandom is massive overreactions to the first game. Regardless of Premier League, NFL, doesn't matter. Got to overreact to the first game, no matter what. It's just a truth. I'm surprised. I mean, I know, yes, part of this has come against a soft schedule, and they did add Fred VanVleet just stabilizes everything he ever touches, and so he's stabilized them in a lot of ways. And I mentioned Dillon Brooks before. He's been great. He's been, I mean, he can defend. He's going to, we headlines because he's doing the silly stare down with LeBron, but he's averaging a couple, like 1 fewer point a game, but he's taking 3 or 4 fewer shots a game. I forget the exact number, but he's taking less. Last time I looked, it was less than 9 shots a game. He's really picking his spots and hitting shots when he's open. And I'm going to credit Ime Udoka with some of that. I think that he is a good developmental coach for them, kind of starting to build this into something and seeing what they've really got with. I mean, this isn't the long-term version of them, right? Like Fred VanVleet's gone in a couple of years. Brooks probably gone in a couple of years. And it's, hey, what is Amen Thompson? We don't know yet. What is the guy who's standing out? I mean, I don't know about Green, but Şengün looks great, man, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. Another player that I've been fortunate enough to have in my dynasty league. So I've been watching him a ton and loving him. Like I saw there was an article in the Ringer today about how he asked Udoka and the coaching staff to coach him harder. And he said in Europe, they would yell at me and stay on me and bench me if my defense wasn't good. And he asked them to do that. And they were like, okay, we can do that. So he's like, they've been cussing him out during film studies. They've been benching him if his defense, he has some lapses on that end. It seems like he's begging them for harder coaching. And that's kind of what you want if you want to see that if you're an executive, you're a coach. I mean, that's great. And he just has taken some huge strides. I mean, he always kind of had that, Joker-like skill set. And we've always heard those comparisons because he's a great passer and rebounder. I think even Joker has said that guy's good. He needs to be more involved in the offense. They need to run their offense. Yeah, that was a year or two ago. But this year, it seems like he's kind of putting it all together and really taking that next step. And I mean, he's still so young too. He has a ton of potential. So I'm a huge fan of his. I think this team is very interesting. And you're right. I just looked it up. So Dillon Brooks is taking 8.7 shots per game. Whereas, a couple of years ago, that was at 15. I mean, he was taking so many shots. And I think my criticism of Dillon Brooks was always he can be this awesome defender. But the issue was he would shoot Memphis out of certain games because he was inefficient. He would take too many shots. Now, and I always said, if he could just focus on being that lockdown defender and take fewer shots, then he could be super valuable. Now, not only is he taking 8 shots per game, he's been super efficient, like 53% from 3, 55% from the field. I think 85% from the line. I mean, that's what you want to see from him because it was always the too many shots and inefficiency that really hurt, or devalued him. It was always the great defense, and then those were kind of the knocks on him. Hopefully he can keep that up and it's not just like a small sample size thing. Obviously his 3-point shooting will come down a little bit. No one's going to stay at 55% or whatever. But yeah, I mean, the fact that he's kind of shooting the ball less and taking smarter shots, I think it's a great sign.
Yeah, it's a sign of maturity, isn't it? Like he just looks like a guy who's in Memphis. There were times, you're right. It wasn't just that he jacked up shots. It was more like, hey, Ja's getting all these shots and Jaren's getting all these rim running dunks. Like, I got to get some, and now he seems more settled into it. The game will come to me. Like if I just be me, I will get good looks and I can get my touches. I can get my points, but I don't have to force it. Like it felt like he did way too much in Memphis. And I don't know. I think it's more, I gave Udoka credit. It's not like Taylor Jenkins wasn't telling him this. It's just sometimes you need it from a different place, man.
I want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Prize Picks. If you haven't tried daily fantasy sports on Prize Picks, you're missing out. You pick 2 to 6 players and whether they'll score more or less points than their Prize Pick projection. If you're right, you win big. You can win 25 times your money on any entry. At Prize Picks, you aren't competing against other people, which might include experts and sharks. It's just you versus the projections. Prize Picks offers projections on virtually every sport: NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, college football, college basketball, soccer, WNBA, esports, NASCAR, tennis, MMA, boxing, and more. You can mix and match players from different sports, so you could have Steph Curry and Patrick Mahomes in the same entry, for example. If you download Prize Picks today and use the promo code RUNNING, they'll double your deposit up to $100. That is the promo code RUNNING, and they will match your deposit up to $100. It takes 30 seconds or less to build a lineup. To show you how easy it is, I'm going to build an entry right now. All right, we're on Prize Picks. I'm going to go Anthony Davis, more than 36.5 points plus rebounds. Then let's go over to the NFL. I've had a lot of luck with the receiving yards this year, so I'm going to go CeeDee Lamb, more than 82.5 receiving yards against Carolina. He's been fantastic lately. And then let's go with a 3-player entry this week. I'm going to go down to A.J. Brown down here. Let's go A.J. Brown, more than 85.5 receiving yards. Let's do a $20 entry. If I win, I get $100. Place entry. Just like that, we're good to go. We're entered. Thank you to Prize Picks for sponsoring this episode. Use that promo code RUNNING and they will double your first deposit. That is the promo code RUNNING. Let's get back to the episode. Yeah, and I wonder how much like the criticism and then the change of scenery. And I think it was so unprecedented to see a team come out like 2 months before free agency and be like, it doesn't matter what he costs, we're not going to retain him. Like I think Shams had like quotes from the Memphis side of things saying that, which like you never see that like that early before free agency being like, this guy is not going to be back here regardless of what happens during free agency. I wonder how much of that was kind of like humbling and made him look at things a little bit differently. And obviously he was rewarded with a huge contract. So, that is interesting. But I mean, whatever they're doing over there, it seems to be working and they're getting the best out of him. So props to them and props to him for kind of making that change. And he's really been great this year. Last question for you. I think that Denver and Boston are on a collision course. It seems like those are the top teams in each conference, and then there's a significant gap. There are other good teams, obviously, but both of those teams just seem so well-rounded. They have chemistry because of the continuity, good coaches, especially, I mean, I'm a huge Mike Malone fan. Do you think those are the teams to beat right now and the favorites in each conference, or is there other teams that kind of stand out to you? Do you agree that those teams kind of feel like they're on a collision course?
Absolutely. They do. They're the two, but like you said, the two best teams, but there's continuity with both, but I got to say, I wasn't sure about the Porzingis fit and how long that would take to come together in Boston and what it would. I'm like, you're giving up some, well, I mean, Robert Williams isn't playing this year, but like are you messing with your chemistry in the room, with Marcus Smart being not there? It's working. Right now it's working. It's really everything you could have asked for on offense. And their rim protection, they formed a wall with, and forget Porzingis is 7'3" and can block some shots. So yeah, those are to me the two teams that are there, and everybody else. If you're Philadelphia and you're thinking, and Embiid said it after the game the other night, that's the best team. That's the team we got to figure out how to beat, and that might mean like we were talking about adding. If you're them, aren't you calling Chicago and saying, "Hi, I'd like to talk to you about DeMar DeRozan, maybe Alex Caruso." Is there, to you, is there more of a market for those guys than Zach?
Yeah, I think the contracts help. Jake Fisher kind of made the same point when he was on this show. He said DeMar has shown that he can, contribute to winning, and obviously he hasn't won like a championship, but those Toronto teams were able to have success in the playoff, went up against LeBron every year, which didn't help. But, he kind of has that reputation for being able to contribute to winning, great closer, not as bad of a contract. And then Alex Caruso, he's one of those guys that you can kind of throw on any team. He's going to have positive minutes. He knows his role, great glue guy. So yeah, I think LaVine is the splashy name, and he's going to get a lot of the attention, I think. But I'm sure there's a ton of teams calling about those guys as well, especially when you factor in the money and
Yeah.
just kind of they fit on more teams, it seems like.
Yeah. And out west, look, I've been saying since the start, if you want to win a championship, Denver's the bar. And it's like, all right, maybe maybe Phoenix pulls it together and their depth is better than we were talking about earlier. The Lakers and the Warriors peak can get close to that if everything clicks. What about Minnesota? Like, they're really good. Their defense is elite. Rudy Gobert looks like Rudy Gobert again. Anthony Edwards, I mean, again, for those of us nerds who watched FIBA, like, you knew he was ready to make a leap. He has been fantastic. And there's still a certain with me, like, you haven't done it in the playoffs. I mean, I think it's a different, the game obviously changes, the pressure changes. I'm not sure that they're ready to challenge Denver in a postseason, although they gave them as much of a game as anybody last year. I think they're a tough matchup because they're the one team who can match the size. Like, Denver's just pretty big across the board, and Minnesota's a problem that way. So, I mean, what do you think of Minnesota?
Yeah, I definitely was a bit low on them entering the season. I think I was too low on them. Like Michael Scotto from Hoops Hype was on the show saying that was his like big surprise team. He thought they weren't getting enough credit. And I was like, I like the pieces there, but I didn't think they could be this good. But I mean, they've been fantastic defensively. Anthony Edwards has taken the next step. I like their supporting cast too. I like some of the role players that they've been able to add.
No.
I'm a big fan of Jaden McDaniels. I think his defense is incredible. They just have a really nice core there. So yeah, I mean, I think I'm a believer now. Entering the season, again, I was a bit too low on them, and I kind of regret that. But they've really impressed me. I do have some concerns about can they do it in the playoffs because we haven't really seen that from them. But I mean, I could see them being the kind of team that maybe goes on like a significant playoff run this year and kind of gets that experience, and then going forward, like next year, they're really scary as a contender.
Yes, except that's when the Supermax or the max.
That's a great point.
And the Edwards extension kicks. Like, it's going to be that new CBA. I mean, what are you hearing from execs? Because like, I'm hearing a lot of teams like looking at the Denver model of 2 stars, a couple of good role players, and trying to fill it in with the Christian Browns of the world might be the model.
I think that is the model. And I think there's a lot of teams that were really scared of it. And so they were like, the Phoenixes of the world, those teams, they were like, let's just go spend money now and try to go all in on this year and then not really worry about, down the road. And I definitely think it's going to limit teams quite a bit. I had Eric Pincus on the show here, and he was talking about just how tough it's going to be for certain teams to kind of keep their core together or make any kind of moves to add around the edges. Even like when it comes to like adding bought out players and stuff, there are so many restrictions that if you're a team that spends a bunch of money, you're basically committed to your core because there's not going to be a lot of ways to improve their roster. So I think a lot of executives are definitely worried about the restrictions that are going to be in place. I don't know. I'm very curious to see how it all works out. And then you have the new TV deal that's right around the corner too. That's going to, just completely change the landscape again shortly afterwards. So I don't know. I think maybe that's the one thing where if you're a team that's spent a bunch of money, you're kind of looking at that TV deal, hoping that can kind of bail you out a little bit and the salary cap jumps up. But I think it is going to be really interesting to see how one of the reasons why I had Eric on the show is because I don't think a lot of fans realize just how, tough things are going to be starting next year with this new CBA and some of the restrictions that are in place, unless you've actually went in and read it, or I think people don't realize how different it's going to be and just how there's not going to be ways to just go add players left and right. And some of the penalties are really strict.
Yeah, it's when I've talked.
It'll be interesting. I'm very
when I've talked to people and Eric is great at this, but like the executive I've talked to have been more concerned about, it's not, it's not the money for a lot of them. Like, the owners are willing to spend it. They think they've got a contender. It's that the 100% matching, like the limited matching on trades, and not being able to bring in guys off the buyout market who made above the league minimum. League mid-level, except there's a bunch of ways guys added good players that just go away. And they're not sure what this is going to look like, and that it's going to be. it's going to be way harder to do what we kind of had come to expect at the trade deadline and buyout, right? Where you're like, hey man, if you're what we talked about today, what's Philadelphia going to do, man? Do they need one more guy? Who can they go get? Who's that guy? That's going to get way harder.
Yeah, you're basically if you're spending all that money, you better really believe in that group because you're probably going to be stuck with them. It's not going to be as easy to go out there and make trades or, oh, we have a little weakness, let's go add 1 or 2 buyout players. Like we've seen that in years past. It's going to be a lot harder. You have to really believe in your group and think you have enough if you're going to spend that kind of money. So it'll be interesting. I appreciate you jumping on here and breaking all this down with me, though. Always fun. Can you tell people where they can find more of your work?
Sure thing. The Twitter handle is right there below at Basketball Talk. And all my work's up at NBCSports.com. Podcast, there'll be videos, if you stuff on Brother from Another and some of the stuff on Peacock occasionally as well. And certainly more as we get deeper into the season right now. A lot of people are talking about that other sport with the more oblong ball a lot, but that will start to evolve as we move. That'll start to evolve a little as you know how it goes. Second half of the year, a lot more people are paying attention, and we'll see. You know, we've got the in-season tournament stuff coming up too, so that'll be. I'm curious what the fan reaction to that's going to be.
I tweeted something the other day. The ratings are up, attendance is up, league pass viewership is up. So I mean, as much as fans are kind of mocking it, or you see on Twitter people are joking about it, there is genuine interest. It seems people are treating it more than just a regular season game. So it's working so far.
I put up a story today, just kind of updating with standings and stuff. But I have a bunch of quotes from Darvin Ham and Anthony Davis and several other players. Damian Lillard talked about this the other night. Coaches, players, teams, they're kind of motivated. Like $500,000. They're like, oh, that's not that much to these guys. I'm like, dude, that's $500,000. Like they're motivated. It's not nothing. And on top of that, you don't, as Darvin said, you don't get to this level without being competitive. So if you put something out there to win, they're not going to lose sleep over it like they might an NBA championship, but guys would like to win that.
Yeah, and Dame had a great quote too about he's like $500,000 for our two-way guys or end of the roster guys. That is huge. I mean, that's life-changing money for them, especially the two-way guys who don't have a huge salary. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how, especially as it kind of progresses, it's going to get more and more intense, and then it'll be really fun to see the fan reaction.
If the fan reaction, I will also tell you what. Have you heard this from players? They like the idea of going to Vegas. They're very down with being one of those 4 teams and getting a few days in Vegas in the middle of the season.
That makes a lot of sense. I didn't even think about that aspect of it. Yeah, it's going to be fun. I think they're doing a great job with it. Everyone, make sure you guys follow Kurt at Basketball Talk. Check out his great work at NBC Sports, Pro Basketball Talk. Great stuff there. If you guys want to hear more episodes of this show, you can watch every Tuesday and Friday at 6 p.m. We air episodes on Twitter or X. On YouTube, you can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you guys listen to podcasts. And until next time, thanks for watching.